Hey, deserving listeners, this is chapter 4 in my deep dive on apologies and forgiveness, and I thought I would start off this episode by analyzing Donald Trump's apology. The title of this is Donald Trump Apologizes for Sexist Comments About Groping Women. I would also say seemingly non-consensually. That's how he described it, that recording that captured him bragging to other people about that sort of thing. So let's get into it. I recently analyzed Bill Clinton's apology for Monica Lewinsky, his several apologies over the number of years. I gave him a D rating. So let's see what rating I give Donald Trump. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. This deep dive is going to be about culture. That will come later, but first let's get to this apology.
I've never said I'm a perfect person, nor pretended to be someone that I'm not. I've said and done things I regret, and the words released today on this more than a decade-old video are one of them.
Okay, so the first thing I noticed is that he seems to be reading from a prompter, which would hinder his ability to convey sincerity, right? So for me, he's apologizing to me. He was apologizing to the American people, to the voters, because this happened just before he was elected president. Who is he apologizing to? Who does he think he's apologizing to? When you are apologizing, whether you're a public figure or a spouse or a family member or a friend, you want to clearly up front state what you're apologizing for exactly. Now, he did identify that. He said, I'm apologizing for the things that I said more than a decade ago, and I'm sorry for that. Let's rewind that.
I've never said I'm a perfect person, nor pretended to be someone that I'm not. I've said and done things I regret, and the words released today on this more than a decade-old video are one of them.
Okay, so he's saying, I'm not a perfect person. I say things that I regret later on, and this is one of them. All right, that's a good start. In my deep dive, I go into detail on regret versus remorse. They are different. Sometimes people will use them interchangeably, which is fine, but I want to delineate between those two because you can regret something but not have remorse, whereas if you have remorse, then you probably regret it, meaning that he might regret saying those things because he's received a lot of criticism and he was worried about not being elected president because of it. But if you have remorse about it, you actually are truly apologizing. Regretting being caught and regretting doing something because you've been consequenced for it, that's not really an apology, right?
Anyone who knows me knows these words don't reflect who I am. I said it, I was wrong, and I apologize. Okay,
so it would be helpful if he elaborated on that a little bit, because that is a good starter. Like if he were to say, I was trying to show off, I don't believe any of those things, let me tell you why those things are horrible and how they are in contradiction with my values. I don't believe you should be able to assault women just because you're famous. That's wrong. If he were to say something like that, it would be more convincing. But if he just says, look, everyone around me knows that doesn't reflect who I am, it's a good start, but he would have to be more convincing.
I've traveled the country talking about change for America, but my travels have also changed me. I've spent time with grieving mothers who've lost their children, laid off workers whose jobs have gone to other countries, and people from all walks of life who just want a better future.
Okay, so he's talking about the experiences he's had recently that have changed him. Changed him how? Is he saying that previous to these experiences, he was the sort of person that supported and talked about and committed acts of violence and assault against women?
I have gotten to know the great people of our country, and I've been humbled by the faith they've placed in me. I pledge to be a better man tomorrow and will never, ever let you down.
Okay, again, it's a good start. It's a good, topic sentence to say of just like, I pledge to be different in the future. When we're apologizing to someone, we probably want to convey that. There's a lot of elaboration that is usually necessary to demonstrate that you mean it or that you have the means to do it or the self-awareness to do it, the process, the system to do it. So it's a good thing to start off with, but am I really convinced that he truly was going to look at all the factors that led up to him saying that? And doing that, I mean, he said he did it. What is he apologizing for, right? He admitted to grabbing people in their private parts without their consent. That's what he said. He said, you can do that, implying that he has done that at least once, if not more than once, to women. Is he going to apologize for those things? Is he going to apologize for promoting that that's okay? I don't know. I don't know what he's like, I regret saying it, and I'm sorry, and I apologize. We're halfway through his apology, so I'm guessing we're not going to get elaboration on that.
Let's be honest. We're living in the real world. This is nothing more than a distraction from the important issues we're facing today.
Of course, Bill Clinton did this as well. I think he waited a little longer to do this. Politicians will do this. Public figures will do this. They will apologize extremely briefly. And to me, it's like, are you just going through the motions? I talk about this in my deep dive. When you are apologizing, particularly if it's for something significant, you have to be sincere. You have to be genuine, and you have to elaborate. You have to come from a place of vulnerability, a place of self-awareness. You have to really convey. You can't just say, I'm sorry and I have remorse and regret. He didn't even say remorse. He said regret. You have to convince. You can't just use the words of an apology and say, okay, I apologized. It's a matter of convincing. Apologies are convincing the harmed individual of all the things that are necessary in an apology. Just saying it, saying, well, I said it, and so it's over, is often insufficient.
We're losing our jobs. We're less safe than we were 8 years ago, and Washington is totally broken. Hillary Clinton and her kind have run our country into the ground. I've said some foolish things, but there's a big difference between the words and actions of other people. Bill Clinton has actually abused.
Okay, so I'll end it there. It probably continues down that road, and there's no sense in listening to that. We use this for our own edification, our own learning, and when we apologize, we don't want to have buts. We don't want to say, I'm sorry, but. Now, there are exceptions to that depending, but if you're really trying to convey that you're sorry, if you're truly remorseful and you're really trying to convince the harmed individual that you have remorse and that you're sorry, you don't want to very quick, you don't want to have the topic sentences and say, look, I'm sorry, I regret what I did. But anyway, let's get back to really what I want to talk about. If you are receiving that kind of apology, which presumably he was apologizing to me as an American who's voting, right? I think that's who he's apologizing to. Now, he should be apologizing to women and to the people he did this to and da-da-da. But anyway, so when he's apologizing to me in this way, just the topic sentences, and then very quickly to all these other people are horrible people, it makes it seem like you're not really sorry. Because if you're truly remorseful and you truly have empathy, then you would really sit with it for a while. And I will say that Bill Clinton's apology was pretty poor as well, that he did a similar thing. I don't think it was this bad. So grade-wise, in terms of apology, what would I give Donald Trump and his apology regarding groping women without their consent? Well, I would give it a F+, because he did say, I take responsibility, I do apologize, I regret it, so there was some slight. So my grading scale, F is completely insufficient, D is slightly sufficient. There's some sufficiency to the apology, and I would say that he had some elements of an apology, but yeah, it was completely insufficient. Am I convinced? Was anyone convinced? He didn't even say what he is apologizing for. He just said, well, that thing I said, instead of really saying, I said the following thing, which was wrong. So yeah, I'm just going to give him F because I don't know why I'm trying to look on the bright. I don't know. I'm used to really bad apologies in my office. It's normal. Humans are pretty bad at apologizing. I don't know if it's just Americans or whatever, but pretty bad. So I'm used to trying to find strengths. I'm used to trying to find, okay, well that was good, but let's try to elaborate on that. So I'm kind of in that mode, and so I'll recognize what he did that was in the right direction. But yeah, it was insufficient. Is it genuine? Did he identify the harm? Did he identify the transgression? Did he identify the reasons why he did this sort of thing? Is he truly conveying remorse? Is he really convincing the audience that he truly is sorrowful and sorry for what he did? That feeling you get when you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that thing. That's just so awful. Do we get that impression from this? I don't know. For me, I would say no. What do you think? All right, so let's go on with the deep dive. In this episode, I'm going to be going into culture. I'm going to talk about some various different angles regarding culture, which is interesting that I started off with Donald Trump. And if you want to hear the rest of this episode, you have to become a patron of the podcast by going to patreon.com. When you become a patron of the podcast, you get instructions to listen to this, along with all the other chapters of this deep dive and hundreds of other episodes that are arguably our best episodes. So yeah, become a patron only if you want to. And everyone else out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.